we go, and here we are. So I am really, really excited to have this beautiful lady here, to be able to pin her down and get an interview with her and chat to her about emotional literacy for kids and for families. This is Tenille Bentley. Good morning.
How are you?
I am so good. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you. And we talked just before we hopped on about aiming for 30 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. Sometimes we just get chatting and but yeah, what I want to do is, yes, thank you obviously for coming on, giving us your time, and kind of opening up your brain and your heart, I'm sure, and sharing what you know is really helpful and really beneficial for kids and for families.
Yeah.
And I want to read a little bit about, what you do, just so that the people who are watching along can get a bit of a sense of where you're coming from with the work that you do. And also we're talking about how we're pretty aligned with doing the stuff we do now because we didn't have it when we were younger, and thinking, well, I can do something about that, which is exciting. So Tenille is the founder of the Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy for kids. She's also a children's author, goals, and an award-winning community leader. And she has such a passion for supporting the next generation with the tools and the support and the strategies and things that we both wish that we had when we were younger, as I was saying before. So as a child, she suffered anxiety, severe anxiety. That's something that we both have in common as well. Emotional trauma and bullying, and that left her feeling pretty isolated, of course, just unable to understand her emotions and why she was feeling the way she did. And we kind of, speak about how emotional literacy or emotional intelligence wasn't a thing. It wasn't that narrative. It wasn't in the narrative of that generation of our parents, right? Well, at least it wasn't in my family, and a lot of other families of I guess parents I coach and work with now. They say, yeah, we didn't talk about this stuff. Like we were fine. We just got up. We just got on with it. And so so I think now you've written a bit about how science has caught up, obviously, and we understand the important role of emotional intelligence and how that plays such a huge role in our lives. And I think, just there's so much that you could share with us. But I want to kind of just ask you, give us a bit of your background of, why you do the work you do, what's really important to you, and sort of how you came to do this work now.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I was just sharing away. I was sharing this live feed to my other pages, so they're clicking around. That's what I was doing. So now they're all shared out. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people tuning in. But yeah, I suppose with my background, I came from a business background. So I built companies for a living, and that was sort of my thing. And I was in the corporate world, and I was running a number of large organisations. I built a global charitable organisation that supported, and we ran that for 10 years, called the Global Good Foundation, that worked with disenfranchised families or people impacted by domestic violence. And we would work on programs and develop leadership programs for children aged 8 to 12. And then we had some leadership programs, and that was led by an incredible woman, Tanya, who ran some of those programs. And we also, prior to that, built out a lot of programs for families as well. So for 10 years I did that, and we reached 5 different countries and 40,000 children. And it was a really amazing experience. But there was a time and point where I realized, hang on a second, and it's an interesting thing, because in many ways I wanted to put myself out of work. I don't want to have that job. I don't want there to be that around. But there were a lot of people trying to keep themselves in jobs, So then it was like, for me, the goal was, let's put ourselves out of work so this doesn't exist. And so, realized that at the time I was working more at a band-aid solution level, and I needed to go deeper at a more sustainable level. And that's sort of where I realized I needed to come in through a different door. And that was and I was very intuitively led, and it was just like, that was with, you know, teaching kids the tools that they need to be able to cope with all those big emotions, but to be able to also take that into their adulthood and to make better life decisions is really, you know, the key. So that's sort of where it took me, and the Kids Academy was born, and we've graduated over 300 children, and we've got instructors all around the world that are teaching our program to different kids, which is amazing. And so we're actually translating it now to Russian, which is really crazy. So yeah, it's just this whole, you know, this whole beautiful explosion of things that to me is an honor to serve, and it's an honor to be able to do it. And it's been, you know, the transition from businesswoman, and at that time I had built a multi-million-dollar company. I was perceived as very successful. I had 50 staff, I had a big office, I had, you know, the nice car and the nice suburb and all that kind of stuff. And but this was empty, and it was just, I was working in digital, and I realized that I was actually a part of the problem and not a part of the solution. And I ended up writing a book about it called Digital Consciousness, and it was about you know, the how the digital terrain, whilst we still need to use it healthily, what it's doing to the consciousness of humanity and how it's impacting us. And I was very blessed to be able to have the vice president from HeartMath write the foreword, and John DeMartini and Dr. John DeMartini and Dr. Bruce Lipton also support it. So it was a really amazing first book, and I was just like, whoa, okay, this is awesome.
Big name.
And then it was just, you know, the exploration of that. And so for me, I realized I wanted to be a part of the solution. So the whole business, in its own serendipity, the way the universe works, it kind of self imploded, and kind of like everything that I built suddenly went, and I was like, okay, so this is happening, and this is obviously happening because, you know, a lot of some elements were out of my control, and so, you know, and that's what really governed it. But I had to trust the process and surrender, and then I made the transition across, and a lot of people thought I lost it, and they were like, what are you doing? And I was working with kids and using sound therapy, and I was just like, I don't know, but I'm just doing this, and I'm going to just keep going and see what happens. And it was filling up my heart more than I could ever have imagined. So it's been a joy.
Wow, what a journey. And I like how you said, you know, I just trusted the process and trusted that it was for me, kind of coming at the right time. It was, you know, that feeling of this is empty, and things happen, things are taken out off your plate, so to speak, and put on. And I think I remember talking to you when we first kind of connected around, you almost just had the download of what to put, what kids needed, what families needed, what kind of support, what they were missing, where the gaps were and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like and how that was?
That was a really surreal experience, because at the time I was working with conscious business leaders. So I was transitioning out of business and trying to sort of, you know, the corporate world, and then trying to make more ethical leaders and teaching them how to be more conscious in business. And so I was looking at that, and part of that, at one point I was sitting at the computer and I was like, just started writing this whole program, and it had nothing to do with anything, which is why I knew it wasn't coming from me. And it was just started writing this whole thing down, I'm just kind of witnessing it.
Yeah.
And then it was finished, and I looked at it and I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? And it was a kids program, and I'm like, I never saw myself working with kids. And I'm like, I'm not working with kids, I'm working with adults. What do you mean? And it's like, kids, this is where you're going to work. Like, this is what you're going to do, and this is the program. And then I was like, well, what do I do now? And then I got the guidance, you know, get the videos. I got step-by-step instructions on what to do. And it was just like, okay, videos, cartoons, workbooks, develop the online program, get the website done. It's just like step by step. And then I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I kind of was in the passenger seat, you know, I was just like, okay, I'm going to, you know, at that point in my life, I learned about the power of surrender. And there's a great book called The Surrender Experiment. If anyone's ever read it, it's amazing. But there is a fine line between surrender and then not doing anything. Like, you know, it was just this surrender point where I was like, okay, this is bigger than me. This is something that I'm not driving. And I know that I'm being called to it because it's not something that I had on my agenda. It wasn't something that I had on my plan, my life plan. But it has been the most rewarding thing I've ever done out of all the work that I've done in my years. It's like, you know, to see these little kids, you know, come out of the program and they've walked in with really, you know, severe issues and come out, and I've worked with a lot of kids with trauma as well, and to come out after working with our program, you know, and then to be like socially interacting. Even one of the grandfathers was sort of crying, like he was just crying because the course was over, and he's like, you know, because he was just like, I can't believe what the transformation of our little boy, like he'd been through so much trauma. His name was Chase, and he, very soft spot in my heart for him, but he was one of the group of kids that had been through quite a bit of trauma and was beginning the process of self-isolation. And he was only 7 or 8 years old. And he was isolating himself and not able to express his emotions. And so when we actually introduced him to our new emotion language that we call it, and our tools with Jazzy and Pinky, our 2 little chickens.
I know. Yeah.
And you know, and I grew up on a farm, so for me, I always looked after the chickens, so that's where the chickens came from. It was like, you know, I always talked to chickens when I was young, and I used to rehab them and nurture them, and I'd have chickens in my bedroom, much to my mum's, you know, disgrace. But you know, I used to live on a little farm, and so that's where the chickens came from. But yeah, when he got introduced to that, you know, at the end of it, he was, they said he's just like a different kid. He was socializing, he was expressing his emotions, he was happier, he was lighter. And it was just like, that's the moment, that's, you know, why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because kids like that I get to help shift their life path. Like there's a trajectory that they're going down.
Yeah.
And just with that little introduction of my work,
yeah,
you know, with the kids, it just shifts it this way. And then long term, that goes like, that's a long term impact. You know, now he's got the tools. Now he knows how to do that. He feels what it feels like to be peaceful. He feels what it feels like to feel love. And he can express that natural intelligence that he's got without, you know, which was always there, but it just got a bit squashed by some of the traumas that he experienced. So yeah, it's a big
that's such a heartwarming story to hear, how kids can have those layers of trauma, of things that have happened, or of you know, the events or things like that, and then to know it's never too late to shift and change that and peel off those layers by giving our kids some of these tools that sometimes they're not taught in school, or sometimes we weren't taught as kids as well. Like we've talked a bit about, you know, our childhood and anxiety and not having the tools and things like that. So I wanted to ask you, maybe in terms of Chase, or just generally, what do you see, what are some of the common sort of difficulties or struggles or behaviors and things like that that you will see kids having when they don't have the emotional literacy skills, and then kind of juxtapose that with coming out of the program or just doing the work, having those skills and those strategies, what that looks like then, so we can kind of, show the parents listening what that transformation can look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So we have got some kids. I'm just seeing if I might just bring this up just to show you some of our kids who and some of the transformation that they've had. Because I always like to use, you know, this is qualitative data. This is, you know, stuff that is really useful for us to understand. So I'll just see if you can see that. So this was Chase. He's a gorgeous boy, and that was the one he was isolating himself. And like I said, you know, he was the one that became like a completely different kid. This one is the gorgeous little girl, Allegra. So she was having a lot of emotional outbursts and like finding it hard with tantrums. And so when I did an Australian-wide study, and I found that with parents. And the biggest issue that they faced was that kids were going from 0 to 100 in seconds, and, you know, having those emotional outbursts and not knowing what to do with it. Now, a big part of that is they don't have that frontal lobe switched on. They don't have the ability, which you would know, to regulate, accept or reject anything. So it's just all coming in and they're just like, I don't know what to do. So they go to their primal phase of, like, you know, what they knew as a baby was to cry. And that's what scream and cry is what they learn as their survival instinct to get love and attention and nurturing. And so they go to that, they revert to that. And we do that as adults, you know, when we don't get our way and we have our tantrums, we do the same thing. And we go back to our animalistic survival. What do you need to be heard? You scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but this was, you know, and so she came in. And even during class, she was having these outbursts occasionally, but by the end, she was calmer. And at some point, I thought, oh, I wonder if she's getting this or not, because I wasn't sure, because she was having these moments, and it was just like, in my group, I kind of let them have that space to be the way they are. And I wasn't sure, but then I saw her and her mum recently, and she came up and gave me this huge hug, and she said to me, "Can I come back?" And I was like, "Yes, come back." So she went from that to being really calm and happy, and so she learned some really essential tools, which is through our chickens, Jazzy and Pinky, and the energy ball. And we teach them that through, you know, everyone has an energy ball, and sometimes they throw it at you, and when they throw it at you, you can only hold one ball at a time, so you might feel what they're feeling. So these kids are learning really advanced skills of how to pick up if this is my feeling or somebody else's feeling.
Yes.
And when they do that, they can actually start to care about their emotional grid system in a way where they can decide whether they're going to take that energy ball or not. You know, you imagine that as an adult. I mean, we don't even have this as adults. Their parents are learning this stuff too. And, you know, so they're learning the ability of how to care for their emotional grid system. We had a 6-year-old within the first week who said to her mum, when her mum came home from work and she was stressed out, obviously a big day, whatever, it was really intense. She walked in, she was sort of like, oh, and her little 6-year-old straight away could feel it. And she said, "Mum, don't throw your energy ball at me."
Wow. And that's boundaries, right? Oh my goodness. Like you said, some of us adults, like I still work with parents and adults themselves to work on setting and maintaining boundaries for themselves, but also teaching our kids to do this. I just love that.
Yeah, so we teach them through that. And then this was a little guy who was, his name was Ryder. And so when he did our program, he actually, he found that, well, mum said that she found that his communication was so much better in the household. And what he actually ended up doing was teaching his brother and his dad how to express their emotions through this program. So, and his mum went on to become one of our instructors. And so, you know, yeah, so she went on to, now she's teaching, and she ran her first group, and she said it's just so incredible. So, you know, this is like the impact that we have. And so the kids are, you know, they're having the ability to, you know, to teach their families, you know, like what it means to express. So that's now relaying back onto the dad and the mum. So it's going, you know, our model is a family integration model. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful to hear those stories. And the kids actually are the ones, of course, that become the teachers, you know, so they end up teaching everyone in the house. And like this little girl, Grace, she went on to teach a whole classroom about empathy, mindfulness and compassion. And she taught them our meditation. We call it the Medi Wedi. And she went into the classroom and actually taught everyone how to do the Medi Wedi.
Oh gosh, my heart, I can't take this.
Face, so gorgeous.
Sweet, look at that face. Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, those are some of the kids, you know, and yeah, it's pretty impressive, I think. But yeah, you know, those are amazing.
Yeah, it is, because we're not just teaching our kids these skills now to use themselves in their own little bubble. Like you said, they can teach their classmates or their family, and they're going to carry these skills for life. You can't unlearn this stuff. And I just think, oh my goodness, the stuff we're doing with them now is shaping what kind of parents they may be when they're older, and if and when they decide to have kids. And it's just this massive loop, and it just makes our heart.
That's why we do what we do. It's just, you know, it's so rewarding, and we need as many of us out there doing this as possible. You know, it's really important work, because I feel we do. I actually genuinely feel we have a duty of care to our next generation, to give them the tools to cope and to create, you know, create better leaders. Like right now, it's not sustainable. Our leaders need to go somewhere and we need to be replaced with emotionally intelligent leaders, you know, around the world. And it's, you know, it's evident with where the world is at right now. So, yeah. So that's the goal. That's the goal.
Oh my gosh. So what we're going to do, everyone, is at the end, I'm going to ask Tenille how people can obviously get in touch with her, learn about the programs and things like that. And she does have a free giveaway for parents, an ebook that she'll tell us about in a moment. So stay tuned for that at the end. I'll put all the links and everything in the Facebook feed and the post. And if you're watching this a bit later on YouTube, then you will see that in the description as well. So don't worry, we're going to put everything in there. And I wanted to ask, how can, you've mentioned a couple of the cartoons and some of those concepts and things that our kids connect with. What else can parents do, or what do you think are some of the critical skills or the foundation skills for raising emotionally resilient, emotionally intelligent kids? What does that look like, do you think?
I think the first and foremost, most important thing is showing and demonstrating emotional regulation to your kids. You being the emotional regulator, they are our mirror. They will mirror everything that we do, as we all know. And, you know, and that sometimes makes parents nervous and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? What have I done? And it's like, no, we're all human and we all are doing the best that we can with what we've got. And so give yourself a pat on the back for the fact that you're even open to learning this stuff. You know, the fact that that's a whole massive step in itself as a parent, you know, just to be open to be able to teach this to your kids and then be open to learn it for yourself. So I think for me, the mirror thing, so the emotional regulation. So for example, if you are, you know, you're getting ready for school and it's crazy and, you know, one's crying and the other one's not getting ready yet and the shoe's not on and they don't want to put their jacket on and you're kind of like, you've got to get there and you're running late for work and you've got an appointment soon. All of this is packed on. You're only human. You may very well have a moment. And as you have that moment, this is the time when you can practice it. So it doesn't mean emotional intelligence and regulation does not mean that you are calm and peaceful all the time. It's how do you cope with the chaos? How do you stay calm in the chaos? And so for our parents, some really great tool is when you are in that moment and you're having that screaming moment or you're yelling or you're doing some behavior that is the primal behavior, then have the awareness enough to stop it in front of the kids and express that and go, I'm just having a moment right now. I'm not coping very well. I'm going to walk outside and take a couple of breaths and I'm going to come back in and try again. And so out you go, couple of breaths, come back in and then try again. Now, it may not be calm and beautiful as you walk back in the door, but at least you're showing and demonstrating how you are personally going to cope with stressful situations, because that's how they're going to cope. You know, so that to me is the biggest tip is, you know, working with that. And then you can also do a number of things with your kids, depending on their age bracket. Like our flagship program is with 5 to 9 year olds, and then we've got a 10 to 12 or as sort of an 8 to 11 program, and then a 5 to 8 program. And the 8 to 11 program will be coming out soon. But the other great thing, depending on the age bracket, is, you know, use toys as a tool to tell story. So, and use toys in playtime to kind of demonstrate emotional regulation. So, you know, you might have, I'll use our chickens. Here's Jazzy and Pinky. They're playing at school and Pinky's all grumpy and having a tantrum. And, you know, there's Jazzy over there watching Pinky getting all grumpy, and suddenly Jazzy starts to feel Pinky's energy ball and it goes across. And now Jazzy's starting to feel what Pinky's feeling. And so Jazzy decides he's going to send him a smile. And then you go, okay, so now think about something that makes you smile. We're going to put it on a magic carpet and we're going to send it across to Pinky. And so we send it across to Pinky, and then you pick up your own energy ball again. And, you know, so we kind of you can do kind of play outs, but you can also do play outs of mum and dad and brother and sister, you know, of the house and the different scenarios that play out using using their toys during playtime.
Yeah.
And that sort of just in a subtle way demonstrates to them and gives them those kind of teachings. Some other really great tools is also, you know, if you really want to try and if they're really hyper and then you're really trying to find calm, you can play a game. I do this in groups with my groups, with my live workshops. And what we do is actually, you know, we play a game and we say to them, okay, you've got to go from this point to that point. And do you know what? The one who wins is the slowest and the quietest. So let's see who can be the slowest and the quietest. And you get to get them into a slow walking meditation, and you never thought you could ever do that. So if you make a game out of it, then that's a really good way. And another great game with breath is important. So with breath, sometimes it's hard when you're trying to instruct them. Like you're saying, oh, come on, take in breath, 4 breaths in and 4 breaths out. It's like, no, let's play a game. Let's blow up a balloon. And the way that we blow up that balloon is we've got to breathe in and then it blows it up. Are you ready? And then you're like, how big is yours? Oh my gosh, mine's this big. And so that's sort of how we've done it in our groups, you know, to be able to get them to breathe without them knowing that it's like a lesson. So you just, play therapy is a big part of what we do, you know, like using play and using color therapy. So when you're coloring in, is a wonderful time to talk to your kids about things that they may not be comfortable to express. So say they picked them up from school. What's going on? Oh, nothing. It's all right. Did you have a bad day at school? Oh, a little bit, but yeah, it's okay. I don't want to talk about it, or they might not want to talk about it. When they're colouring in and you colour in with them, they're in a mindfulness state. So you can actually probably talk to them about that situation whilst they're in that state, and they'll most likely express it in that state. Or before they go to bed is another good time.
Yeah, I always say that little snuggly time before bed is when I have the best conversations with my 2. And it's something I tell parents about. I'm like, that's the time when your child is not in those emotionally hijacked states. They're not with those in those heightened states. And so they're more receptive and they're more calm, and you can have those conversations and bring up some of the bigger things. Plus it's sort of darker, they're under the covers, so it's safe to open up those cans of worms. So I love that. And play for me is a huge, I just think play is such a beautiful avenue. It's our child's occupation. So why not use that when they are engaged and enjoying what they're doing to, you know, have some of those conversations that maybe they otherwise wouldn't be receptive to. So I love that. All right, so what is one little thing you could leave us with? Maybe either a success story or something, or a last sort of a tip or a takeaway. What's something before we kind of wrap up that you want to share with everyone?
Okay, well, I think that you know, some of the key things that our parents, or one of the big things, like I said, is going from the 0 to 100. But I think the biggest thing that I find is for our parents to learn self-compassion. So be kind to yourself. You know, there's a beautiful book called Selfcompassion, and it is a wonderful practice of, you know, I'll see if I can find the name of the author for everyone, because then it's useful if I just say self-compassion.
I think I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book.
Yeah,
Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff.
Oh, it was on the tip of my tongue. Neff. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a great book. Another great book is Calm Parents, Happy Kids by Dr. Laura Markham. That's a brilliant book. But I think the biggest thing is self-compassion, because I find that a lot of parents, you know, they feel almost exhausted by trying so hard, you know, trying to do the right thing and trying to be the perfect parent and doing it. It's like, you know what? You're human, like just be human and let your kids see that. Let them see like when we do check in with our parents and our kids to ask them how their energy ball feels, you know, because that's our emotional language through our program, is how does your energy ball feel, because it's through an object as opposed to saying it personally. So it's much easier for them to express it. So we also say to our parents, you know, be real. Tell them if you're stressed, say I'm stressed, my energy ball is stressed, or, you know, let them see the myriad of emotions and understand that you can get through the other side of these and still be okay. But the biggest thing I see is the beating up of self, you know, like parents not having compassion for themselves for what, you know, what they're doing. And so when you do, if you find that you're in a really intense moment, with your kids or at the family, and you're just like, we call it a self-compassion break. I'm just going to take a self-compassion break. I'll be back in a minute. You walk away, you place your hands on your heart and you go, it's okay. You're human. This happens, you know, it's for you to feel this frustrated and this angry and annoyed and just feeling like, you know, you want to just get in a car and drive away. That's okay. Like, it's all right. You know, this happens to a lot of people and you're only human. So, and then you can say things like, may I be safe, may I be well, and may I be kinder to myself. Because when you practice that kindness to yourself, you actually become kinder to everyone else around you. So it's when you can have that compassion and take that moment. And I've practiced this. It's a long life practice for me, because and I'm sure as well with you, you know, with our childhoods, you learn. For me, beating myself up has been my biggest you know, frenemy. You know, and it's been like, you know, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, what's wrong with you? So I've really learned how to take that time to be compassionate to myself. And I've found that by doing that, I've been kinder and more compassionate to other people around me. It just softens everything. So take a self-compassion break, parents. That would be my biggest thing.
I love that. As you were saying that, a conversation I just had this morning with another parent came up, because we literally talked about the exact same thing, the self-compassion for that, like, mum guilt that we have. I can't speak on behalf of dads, but with us mums, we do, generally speaking, do a lot of the heavy lifting, and we can beat ourselves up, and we can talk to ourselves in a really toxic, negative way, like, you know, it's all your fault. Why did you even try? Oh, you're such a waste of space, or things like that. And I was speaking to this mum about basically, you know, realizing that we can and need to speak to ourselves like we would a beautiful little child, maybe one of our own kids, or maybe us when we were younger. What would we have wanted to hear, or what would we say to our kids in those big, hairy, emotional moments? We wouldn't say, you're the worst, you should be able to deal with this. We would say, it's okay, like the stuff you said, it's okay, you're human, this stuff's going to happen. Take a compassion break, and talking to yourself like a beautiful child or your best friend, and just having that moment to, like, regather yourself.
And another good trick for parents, if your kids are having a tantrum, is try talking to them like they're someone else's child instead of your own. Because we would talk very differently, you know, we wouldn't be as, you know, as raw. So it's like, how would you deal with them and talking to them like they're someone else's child? But also, in the midst of a tantrum, the most thing that they need is probably a hug. And if you can, without the kicks and screams, if they're kicking, then of course there's boundaries. But if they're not, and then it seems counterintuitive, but to go in and give them that safety and that love and a little nuzzle, and, you know, like, it's all right, I love you, you're okay, you know. But obviously there are, you know, it's finding those boundaries as well. So if the tantrum's a bit out of control, then you just I'm just going to give you a minute, I'll walk out and you let me know when you're ready and we'll come back.
Yeah, that reminded me of a beautiful quote that says, when our kids are being their most unlovable is when they need love the most. And I think, oh yeah, that is
so hard, because it triggers the buggery out of us, you know. Like, you're so triggered by it because you can't help but take it to heart, and you can't help but feel the things that are triggering for you. But the reality is, you know, in your mind you might be thinking they're acting like a child, but that's because they are a child, you know. And as adults, when we act like a child, we're actually acting like a child, you know. Like, whereas the kids are like, they're actually, you know, they are children. So it's just like, yeah, they're having a rough time, and it's just like, how do I hold them through that without me jumping into the tantrum with them?
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Okay, well, I want to say a huge thank you for your time and for sharing all your wisdom and your insights and your experience and those stories about the beautiful kids as well. As I said before, I'm going to put all the links down in the comments or in the description section, but you can find out more about Tenille and her work on emotionalliteracyacademy.com. You can find her on Facebook, just the same, Emotional Literacy Academy, same on Instagram, and she has a parenting blog, which is on her website as well. So that's emotionalliteracyacademy.com. Go to the resources page section and then the parenting blog, and you'll find lots of info there. I think I got lost in the rabbit hole of your website because there was so much good information and blogs and articles, and I was like, ooh. So I would highly recommend anyone to hop on that website or find Tenille on Facebook and connect with her if you want to find out more about her programs. Are they in person and online?
The in-person ones are done through our instructors. I still run some workshops, and then we've got instructors. I think we've got one in Melbourne, one in Brisbane. I don't think we've got anyone in Sydney yet. So if anyone wants to become an instructor, let us know. But yeah, we're looking for, people that are passionate about this and want to teach it, and they can build a little bit of a business out of it, which is great. But yeah, the workshops are dependent on where the instructors are, but there is an online 6-month deep dive, like really deep dive into full transformation in the home. And that's a 6-month with me weekly coaching them. So it's a really hold your hand process type of thing for 6 months, which is really where we see the change in behavior and make it.
I was going to say that's to be that will be the life-changing, the sustainable change where you see that transformation doing it with you. Is that for the child and the parents, or just the parent?
Yeah, no, both. So the 6-week, there's a 6-week component. So it maps the way our brain learns. So we've got a 6 weeks it takes to form a synaptic connection, 6 months for it to become, after repetition, 6 months of repetition for it to become a habit. So there's a 6-week component, which is for the kids. That's got the cartoons, it's got the Jazzy Pinky, it's got the workbooks, the colouring in sheets and thought bubbles, how to manage thoughts, all these kinds of things are wonderful in there. And then after the 6 week, they go into a deep dive of 6 months, which they have a 1 monthly workbook, and they fill that in as a family. So they have that on the fridge, and they have like a little emotion tally chart, and they do all these things throughout the month. And the exercises are no more than 10 minutes a day. So they're really, really accessible for the busy parent and trying to fit it in. And it's usually great to do it around dinner time or something like that.
Awesome. That is so wonderful. I'm so excited to get this stuff out to parents, get it out to families, because I know how beneficial it will be. So thank you again for sharing your time with us. And guys, I'll go back on to the Facebook feed, and if you've got any questions, we can answer them, and I'll put all the links and everything in there as well. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, Tenille.